Hi. Today is June 7th, 2016. And we have a profound revolution going on a global scale. A unique and profound revolution in human history. Which has not really become apparent to the population of the United States and has not become apparent to the leadership of the United States, or at least the people who you might consider to be the leaders of the United States. There are people in the United States who are terrified of this revolution, and there might even be a few people at high levels that are looking forward to this revolution. Now, what we're dealing with is an increase of what you might call the surreal. Okay, where reality increasingly is replaced with surreality. And the more this revolution is unfolding, of China with Russia, with India, and now Japan, and the new Silk Road, and the development projects, and the expansion of global economics and development, and the new agreements that are being made, and the new arrangements, and the bilateral agreements that are being made that go around the international financial system of London and Wall Street. All of this is going on. And the more it accelerates, the more surreal is the response. Now, I'll give you an example. China is in a financial crisis and could bring down the whole world economy. That's what people are hearing in the media. China is putting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars into infrastructure. How could they not? How could they be collapsing? Their economy is expanding 5, 6, 7, 8% a year in physical terms. How could they be collapsing? No. China's collapsing. Wall Street is stable. Look, the stock prices have never gone higher, right? Wall Street is the stable place to be. And then it turns out that the Federal Reserve is buying stock of the major companies and holding the stock in their vaults. In some cases, they now own 50% of the company. So it's not the magic of the market anymore. It's not, oh, I want to buy the stock of all these companies because I'm going to make a lot of money. No, it's the Federal Reserve is buying the stock to artificially keep the stock prices up. The companies are buying back their own stock. Oh no, it's China which is collapsing. So you had the spectacle of Jack Lew at a conference with the vice chairman of the Chinese central bank, and Jack Lew is saying that we'll be nice to China if they allow the yuan to float freely. And the Chinese vice president of the central bank says, "What do you mean? Our yuan is stable because its value reflects the actual value of, of supply and demand. And besides, we're going to be nice to you. We're going to set up a quota of how much Western investment can come in to buy our stocks and bonds. I mean, we're letting you come in to buy our stocks and bonds. Oh, by the way, We need to get some serious legal clarification in the United States so Chinese can come in and buy up your companies. I mean, you need our help, don't you? You need to have us come in and buy up your companies, don't you? So that's the collapse that China's having. They're trying to be good to the United States. They're trying to help the United States, right? So China's collapsing and Wall Street is doing great. So it's so surreal. It's beyond belief. Okay, now let's go to the trip of Modi to Washington. You know, he went to Afghanistan. He went to. He came here for 3 days, and the media is saying, well, India is trying to is going to become our partner against China in the South Asian Seas. We're doing joint maneuvers. We're giving them all this technology. India is a democracy. These other countries are not a democracy. India is going to be our special partner. This is in spite of the fact that India has a very long history with Russia when it was in the Soviet Union and Russia today. Given the fact that India has always been attacked by our forces centered in the Taliban that we created in Afghanistan was against India. Given all of this, India under the new Prime Minister Modi, who's not a, you know, is against China, right? Well, let me tell you something. Modi isn't coming here to the United States to be played against China. He's coming here to the United States to try to help the United States by increasing business with the United States. He's not coming here to play geopolitics. The Indians have made it very clear they're not going to budge from their non-aligned status. Meanwhile, Russia and India are working very closely together and expanding. And guess what? Russia is not. And in the Foreign Affairs magazine, they said, India wants to convince Russia, recruit Russia to go against China. India wants to recruit Russia. This is the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, saying they want to recruit Russia to go against China or to balance against China. Baloney. Russia and China have never been closer. They're having massive development agreements. They're coordinating on every level. And the Russians are bringing the Japanese to the Vladivostok forum in Japanese Prime Minister in September. And the Chinese are going to be there. And the Russians are going to be there in Vladivostok, and they're going to talk. They're talking about developing the entire region around North Korea, which includes North Korea, China, Russia, South Korea, and Japan. This whole area, this whole Pacific area, they're going to be discussing it, and this will be a chance for Abe, Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, to actually begin to coordinate with the Russians and the Chinese for the development of that region. Okay, so let's go to another one. I love this one. Israel is our only friend in the region. We have to support Israel with all our might. They hate Iran and Hezbollah. Hezbollah and Iran are a threat to Israel's existence. And they're the greatest threat in the region. Not ISIS, not al-Nusra, not al-Qaeda, which are being supported by the Turks and the Saudis. So you have this really rabid, psychotic Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. And where's he going to right now? He's going to meet with Putin. Oh, and by the way, the Israelis have worked out agreements with Russia so that they don't get in the way militarily. So the Israelis can do their thing and the Russians can do their thing to help the Syrians. Well, what does that mean? And then Putin returned a tank that was on display in Russia. That was one of the tanks that was captured in the Syrian war on the Golan Heights when the Israelis invaded the Golan Heights. And this has to do with the 3 missing Israeli soldiers whose families have been, putting up a whole issue for many, many decades. And then Bibi says that he recognizes that Russia and the Soviet Union and the Red Army played a major role in stopping Hitler, and that Jews were part of the Red Army. What's going on here? Israel, what's going on with you? How come you're becoming cozy with Russia? And Russia is propping up the Syrian government, helping prop up the Syrian government. And now Russia has asked the United States, we need to resolve this moderate issue. The moderates. Who are the moderates? The moderates are completely embedded and part of the fighting of al-Nusra. Don't attack al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, which is backed by the Saudis and the Turks in Aleppo, because you might be hurting the moderates. Well, who are the moderates? Well, they're all working with al-Nusra. Please tell us. And so the deadline for the United States telling the Russians who the moderates were ended on May 25th. And now the Russians are going to go ahead. They're saying, well, you didn't tell us who the moderates are. And whoever they are, they're fighting with al-Nusra. So we're going to go ahead and go for it now. So who are the moderates? This is totally surreal. Oh, Assad has to go. Well, if Assad goes and ISIS and al-Nusra take over, the terrorism will increase. Well, Assad has to go, but we also have to fight ISIS. Well, how do you do both? Well, Assad is a bad guy. We got to get rid of him. That's totally unreal. That's totally surreal. How can you have 2 different narratives that conflict before God and everybody? It's totally surreal. And when is that popping? And your best friend Israel, what are they doing? Well, they're looking at the reality of the situation. Who do we trust? Who can we trust to make an agreement? This is not some horseshit narrative that put together by some 25-year-old press people and prompted by the Obama administration. Some bullshit narrative about Assad being the devil, the worst killer, while ISIS is chopping off heads like crazy, killing Christians like crazy. And the Christians in America say nothing. Are they defending the Christians? No, they're not defending the Christians. So you have this complete surreality. You have this narrative coming out of the U.S. government, which is so at odds with reality that the whole world out there can see it. But the American people don't see it. Because their minds have been destroyed. The American people's minds have been destroyed. I'm serious. I have this conversation every day. Well, we got to defend Israel, okay. And we got to get rid of Assad, okay. And we have to crush ISIS, okay. But if you don't get rid of Assad, ISIS will increase. Yeah, but it's complicated. You try to explain this to them. They don't, it's like their minds have been destroyed. It's like their minds are jelly. You know, it's one narrative or one slogan counterposed with a different slogan, and it doesn't make any sense. And people are walking around like that. Obama, he's covering up the 28 pages. He's ordering people killed every Tuesday with drones, in which the alleged targets, 1 out of 10, nine are collateral, women, children, whatever. Well, people don't do anything about it. They don't say anything about it. Oh, I like Obama. Why? Well, he's not Republican. He's not the Koch brothers. You want Donald Trump? Did you like George Bush? No, we're not talking about Donald Trump and George Bush. We're talking about Obama. Oh, no, Obama. Obama's all right. He's just trying. He's trying. It's a narrative. It's totally surreal. It's totally surreal. China is being aggressive in the South China Sea. What are they doing? These are their islands. The U.S. agreed that they were their islands back in a while ago, or didn't contest that they were their islands. Huh? China's aggressive. China's trying to dominate. Militarily dominate. We need freedom of the seas. Freedom of the seas. Freedom of the seas. Those are Chinese islands. The freedom of the seas has nothing to do with Chinese islands. And they have been Chinese islands historically, except during the period of during World War II. They were Japanese islands before they were Chinese islands. And because of the communists, the Cold War, the United States didn't recognize that they were China's islands, but they didn't recognize that they were anybody else's islands either. They left it open. Now, all of a sudden, they're not Chinese islands. But the U.S. isn't saying whose islands they belong to. They're not Chinese islands. Well, what are they then? Whose islands are they? Well, they're not going to tell you whose islands they are. Again, it's totally surreal. And then you have the human rights question. For 2 years now, 3 years, since 2011, the human rights violations in China, human rights violations in China, human rights violations in China, human rights violations in Russia, human rights violation. And finally, the foreign minister of China, in a press conference with the foreign minister of Canada, broke all protocol and just let it rip. Said, what are you talking, because this reporter was asking the question of the Canadian foreign minister. And the Chinese foreign minister is not supposed to answer that question. He's supposed to answer a question from the Chinese reporter. But the Canadian reporter had pulled together 3 questions from the press. And it was like, why didn't Canada intervene to stop this Canadian charged with spying and is being held in prison? Why, everyone knows China extremely violates human rights. And then China's military aggression. This is so the Chinese foreign minister said, look, we brought 600 million people out of poverty. Do you think we could function if we didn't have human rights? Who are you? Have you ever been to China? So, and it really, it even made the New York Times. But the point is, This human rights thing. Everything is human rights. Meanwhile, Obama's droning the hell out of these areas. Somalia, Yemen. Well, now the Saudis are murdering. Now we got our troops in Yemen. So this whole thing is surreal. It's surreal beyond belief. And then you have Ash Carter, the weirdest defense secretary we ever had, who's never been in the military, never been ROTC, is a particle physicist and a medieval specialist. That's his specialty, Middle Ages. He's got a doctorate in the medieval studies. That's his big passion. So you got a guy with a passion for the Middle Ages who's never been in the military, is a particle physics guy, who helped design a first strike capability, a war-winning first strike against Russia and China. And who is he? He's our defense secretary. And he's calling for what? He's calling for all of the Asian countries to form the equivalent of NATO against China. Talk about surreal. These countries are moving towards China as fast as they can. And he's calling for them to form a NATO military structure under the U.S., under a NATO-type, Pacific NATO-type military structure. Guys, this is pure. It's one thing when the United States was the most powerful economy in the world, and they had Sato, they had that kind of structure against the communist China, which was one of the weakest countries in the world, economically, relatively, per capita. Wasn't very developed. And you had Russia. You had the, Cold War, the Vietnam War. Right? During the Vietnam War, we had that kind of agreement. We had the CETO. And of course, what are they going to have another CETO at this time? With the U.S. a basket case, increasing economic basket case? I mean, that is surreal beyond belief. And now you have military exercises starting in Poland. 31,000 troops are moving towards the Russian border, simulating a Russian invasion. So how do you have 31,000 troops mobilizing towards the Russian border in a war game simulating a Russian invasion? It's total surreal. But what's not surreal is that there is a plan to launch a preemptive nuclear strike on Russia and China now that the system is crumbling. That's not surreal. That's real. Unfortunately. And the only way this can be dealt with is, one, Obama's removed. This is where this is going. Because Russia and China and other nations are at this point moving very fast and to consolidate an entirely new system. And if the U.S. financial system collapses, the United States has a period of time to reorganize itself and become part of that system, or die. That's the reality. So we're dealing with one form of surrealness after another, and it gets very weird. You have German Prime Minister Merkel going to Russia. Going to China. German Prime Minister going to China. Right? And at the same time, this is for economic reasons. So Germany, you have the head of the European Union, Juncker, and the Prime Minister of Italy going to St. Petersburg later this month for the St. Petersburg Forum. Oh, I thought we had sanctions on Russia. No, they're talking economic development of the Arctic. They're going to be talking joint economic development of the Arctic. So you have this total collapse of reality going on. And all-out effort to maintain and pretend. Everything is to pretend. We're going to pretend that Russia and China and India are really opposed to one another. We're going to pretend that Israel isn't going to become friends with Russia in order to play a part in the region, because they see the shift taking place. We're going to pretend that the financial system is strong while the Federal Reserve piles up worthless stock assets in their portfolios. So everything is pretend. Everything is pretend. The whole system is increasingly going into pretend. We're holding it together, pretend. And if you don't agree with our pretenses, we will nuke you. And that is kind of where we are right now. We'll nuke you if you don't agree with our pretenses. That is totally bizarre. That is totally. And these reporters, they don't care. They are just brain dead zombies with a narrative. That's it. They have no conceptualization of what's going on. It's totally insane. The U.S. population has become totally insane under this surreality. They don't want to know reality. It's too scary. We don't want to know that the Saudis were involved in 9/11. We got the proof in the 28 pages. And there's other stuff too that's starting to come out. And this is not conspiracy theories. This is the actual proof. And we don't want to know. We don't want to know Obama's a killer. We don't want to know the financial system is going under. We don't want to know. Please, we don't want to know. We would rather you lie to us. We would rather live in a world of lies, a world of narratives. We have our own fantasy world anyhow. We would rather live in a total fantasy world. We don't want to be in the real world. We're Americans. We don't want to be in the real world anymore. Seventh, 2016, and we have a profound revolution going on a global scale, a unique and profound revolution in human history, which has not really become apparent to the population of the United States, and has not become apparent to the leadership of the United States, or at least the people. Reality increasingly is replaced with surreality. And the more this revolution is unfolding, of China with Russia, with India, and now Japan, and the new Silk Road, and the development projects, and the expansion of global economics and development, and the new agreements that are being made, and the new arrangements, and the bilateral, who you might consider to be the leaders of the United States. There are people in the United States who are terrified of this revolution, and there might even be a few people at high levels that are looking forward to this revolution. Now, what we're dealing with is an increase of what you might call the surreal. Okay, where bilateral agreements that are being made that go around the international financial system of London and Wall Street. All of this is going on, and the more it accelerates, the more surreal is the response. Now, I'll give you an example. China is in a financial crisis. Hi. Today is June